beautiful cumulus clouds. It is the ravishing beauty of the mountains. It is the gorgeous sound of the music. It is the delight of the children.
Everyone knows The Sound of Music as a polished, timeless classic. But what if hidden mistakes were sitting right in front of you? One scene in particular was never edited, and once you notice it, the moment becomes unforgettable. That small slip is only the beginning. From awkward cuts that break the flow to odd details that don't belong, we've uncovered 13 surprising bloopers that found their way into the final film. They're easy to miss at first, but once seen, they change how you watch forever. Are you ready to take a closer look? Behind the hillside magic. One of the most iconic images in film history is Julie Andrews spinning atop a sunlit meadow, arms outstretched, singing the title number, The Sound of Music. It looks effortless, but behind that breathtaking shot was a combination of technical headaches, physical discomfort, and even frustration from locals. To capture the sweeping view, the crew relied on a helicopter-mounted camera, an unusual technique in the mid-1960s. The cameraman was strapped to the aircraft, flying straight toward Andrews as she twirled in the open field. The problem? Helicopters are incredibly loud. Andrews couldn't hear her cues to begin singing and spinning, so choreographer Mark Bro crouched in the bushes with a megaphone, shouting instructions over the roar of the rotors. Each time the helicopter passed, its downdraft was so powerful it knocked Andrews off balance, flinging her into the grass. She later joked that she was constantly spitting dirt and hay. It took 6 or 7 attempts to capture a usable take, each time with Andrews being blown over by the force of the wind. Not even nature was helpful. The stunning views had belonged to a farmer who agreed at first to keep the tall grasses standing for the filming. But when the crew returned, the grass had already been mowed, and they had to hastily create the scene out of less dramatic blades. The crew built an artificial stream and even moved trees for Andrews to dance among. The farmer got understandably fed up as the filming dragged on, especially since helicopters and crews were disturbing his cattle. But the results? Magic. So many greens, sparkling brooks, and the illusion of spontaneity. In fact, it was a very tight ship, even by new planting standards. The shot became the photograph that defined the film itself, a reminder that what looks natural on screen is seldom achieved without the greatest effort. You thought helicopters were risky? The next scene brought danger much closer to the actors. When injuries shaped the film. While The Sound of Music is remembered for its polished charm, not everything went smoothly during production. Some of the most memorable sequences came at a physical cost to the actors, while others were altered in the editing room to improve pacing. Together, these changes shaped the final version of the film in ways audiences might never suspect. The most serious on-set accident involved Charmian Carr, who played Liesl. During the 16 going on 17 number, she danced with Daniel Truhitt inside the glass-walled gazebo. Near the end of filming, Carr slipped on the slick floor, lost her balance, and crashed through a pane of plate glass. She injured her ankle badly enough to require bandaging. Rather than delay the shoot, the crew quickly treated her, covered the injury with makeup, and disguised her movements so the scene could be completed. The actual gazebo presented another hurdle. The genuine structure in Salzburg was too small for shooting, so the production team proceeded to build a bigger replica on the Fox lot in LA for better ease of camera work. Julie Andrews, too, left her own subtle but enduring mark on the music of the score. At the end of Do Re Mi, she added a note in an octave higher than that in the written score. Later, she explained it by saying that it was simply because she could hit it. That ornament became almost one of the hallmark moments of the song, though sadly, Andrews would lose her upper register after a botched throat procedure in 1997. Editing also reshaped the rhythm of the movie because several filmed scenes stayed on the cutting room floor. Liesl introducing Rolf to Maria, the captain's solo rendition of Edelweiss in the garden. According to director Robert Wise, they were decluttering the slowing pace of the narrative. These cuts and sharper transitions created a more vibrant tempo in the film. Injuries, improvisation, and meticulous editing all went into creating what audiences know today as this seamless experience. The outcome might feel effortless, but it is forged from resilience, quick thinking, and bold decisions behind the scenes. The success no one predicted. When The Sound of Music opened in 1965, few predicted a runaway phenomenon. Early reviews were mixed. Some critics found it old-fashioned, as Hollywood tilted toward grittier fare, but audiences answered with thunderous enthusiasm. Within 4 weeks, it climbed to number 1 at the box office, then simply refused to leave. By late 1966, it had surpassed Gone with the Wind.
So HBO Max announced that they're pulling Gone with the Wind until they can find a way to put it in historical context.
To become the all-time highest grosser, a title it held for 5 years. In total, it sold more than 283 million tickets worldwide, and its original runs and 2 major re-releases generated about $286 million at the time. Astronomical figures for a musical. It broke attendance and revenue records in 29 countries and, in many cities, remained on screens for 4.5 years. What powered that endurance wasn't only the postcard scenery and earworm melodies. It was the film's emotional clarity. The story fused romance, family, and moral courage in a way broad audiences could instantly understand. While Julie Andrews' radiant presence and crystalline vocals anchored every scene, families would keep coming back because the movie checked all the boxes for repeat viewing. For children, the Von Trapps most enjoyed showing how to really play. In some cases, love was preferred over authoritarian abandonment shadows that lengthened in darkness. Publicity grew word of mouth, turning common viewings into collective get-togethers wherein viewers sang softly, then would later bring along friends. The Sound of Music was equally at home in cinemas and living rooms. Its melodies filled the airwaves, its filming locations drew pilgrims to Salzburg, and its imagery, from Julie Andrews twirling on the hilltops to the family's final mountain escape, became symbols of joy, resilience, and freedom. This was the path through years of pulling down social curtains. Evenings in the light of the projection screen provided uplift without innocence, but sometimes reminded the audiences that this could house tenderness along with defiance. More than box office figures, its success proves that a project once doubted by insiders was really a phenomenon beyond expectation. Julie Andrews, The Perfect Gamble. When the filmmakers of The Sound of Music began casting Maria, they faced a dilemma. Writer Ernest Lehman believed there was only one actress capable of bringing warmth, humor, and sincerity to the role, Julie Andrews. He was so sure that he reportedly declared, "As far as I'm concerned, there's only one person to play this role." Yet, in 1964, Andrews wasn't yet a household name. She had just completed Mary Poppins and the Americanization of Emily, neither of which had been released, and she was still best known for her stage work in My Fair Lady and Camelot. Hollywood executives were less convinced. Jack Warner had famously passed her over for the film adaptation of My Fair Lady, claiming she wasn't photogenic enough for the screen. Studio heads circulated lists of bankable stars: Doris Day, Grace Kelly, Shirley Jones, Angie Dickinson, Anne Bancroft, Carol Lawrence, and Leslie Caron were all considered. Mia Farrow even auditioned multiple times for a younger role. Any one of them could have changed the film's legacy. However, the thing that Robert Wise had was a secret advantage. He had viewed some early footage of Mary Poppins before it was actually released, and straight away recognized Andrews as a star. He went rushing in to lock her up before other competing studios figured it out for themselves. Andrews signed the contract for the part at a mere $225,000, a respectable sum, of course, but no share in profits. When she would soon be commanding $1 million a film, this contract would have made her seem all the more underrated. The mention of Andrews does, however, give way to another worry regarding this particular role. Her first question to Wise was, "How are you going to get all the sugar out of this picture?" She felt, you see, that the story was going to be very, very sentimental, and she wanted to have assurance that all the sugar was going to be getting balanced out. In fact, that gut feeling was pretty critical. Her realistic sweetness kept the film sincere rather than saccharine. It's a clear choice now. In reality, however, Julie Andrews' casting was a bold risk. A risk that turned an up-and-coming talent into a legend and handed up a performance that would be considered one of cinema's greatest. Christopher Plummer's reluctant yes. While Julie Andrews was quickly locked in to play Maria, securing the right actor for Captain Georg von Trapp.
Yes, you are, Captain. Fräulein. Now.
Proved far more complicated. The man who eventually embodied the stern naval officer with hidden warmth, Christopher Plummer, nearly walked away from the role multiple times. At first glance, the character as written felt too stiff and one-dimensional to him. He described the captain as a cardboard cutout of an authoritarian father, and Plummer was uninterested in playing a lifeless stereotype. The studio explored other big names. Sean Connery, Richard Burton, Bing Crosby, and Yul Brynner were all discussed as potential leads. Each brought star power, but none seemed to strike the right balance of authority and vulnerability. Plummer, though hesitant, remained their top choice. Still, he refused to sign until significant changes were made. Plummer wrote directly to screenwriter Ernest Lehman, outlining his concerns. He wanted Von Trapp to be more than a rigid disciplinarian. He wanted layers. He put forth for the captain being worldly, charming, and capable of humor. But, he added, let the gradually softening of his heart beat through the influence of Maria. He also asked for different kinds of scenes, stern with Elsa, tender with Maria. Greatly, this was agreed by the creating team. Lehman and director Robert Wise reshaped important scenes to stress this depth, and Plummer later admitted that those changes let him commit to the role fully. He even argued for a solo musical moment, hoping to show the captain's inner conflict through a song. Not all his suggestions made it to the cut, but being part of that collaboration had its payoff for him. It made possible a performance with gravitas, yet one that was vulnerable as well, and turned Von Trapp into a character both commanding and relatable. Plummer might have chafed, but in fact, complexity raised the stakes. Without such demands, the captain would have remained flat. Instead, Plummer's version became unforgettable, proving that hesitation sometimes leads to brilliance. Rain delays and rising tensions. Despite its idyllic appearance on screen, filming The Sound of Music in Salzburg and Bavaria was anything but smooth. Nature quickly became the production's greatest challenge. The film is filled with sunlit meadows, lush gardens, and crisp mountain air. But behind the scenes, the cast and crew endured relentless rain that often brought shooting to a standstill. What looks like bright summer skies on film was, in reality, carefully timed breaks between downpours. Christopher Plummer in particular felt the strain. He was already uneasy about his singing voice being partially dubbed, something that left him frustrated and even considering walking away. Added to that tension was the sheer unpredictability of the weather. Scenes that seemed simple, such as Liesel sneaking into Maria's bedroom window after meeting Rolf.
And everybody at Nürnberg Abbey. And now, dear God, about Liesel.
Became exhausting. That sequence alone required 15 takes because of rain, lighting, and continuity problems. To simulate the soaking effect, a device called Mr. Rainstorm sprayed cold water over Charmian Carr to keep her drenched between cuts, leaving her shivering throughout. The indoor sets were not the last to finish. Even for the mountains, the roads of gooey mud made the transportation of equipment by vehicle impossible. Cameras, crew, and even Julie Andrews had to be dragged over steep little hills in ox carts. Robert Wise later recalled seeing Andrews bundled up in a fur coat, bouncing in one of those carts, waiting patiently to film the iconic opening shot. Every delay meant higher costs and longer hours, which tested morale. The initial big scene for the children, jumping on Maria's bed and singing "My Favorite Things," had to be put on hold due to rain. That, coupled with the long hours, left everyone a bit restless. Somehow, though, the shoot went on, and by the time the final cut found its way to the screen, it could not have looked as if any of those hardships were recorded for posterity. The sun always managed to shine in Salzburg, even if all that rainy sky hung just outside the frame. Keep your patience, because the next challenge had the cast cracking up instead of acting. 12 takes for one kiss. The romance between Maria and Captain Von Trapp gives The Sound of Music its emotional core, but filming their big kiss was anything but romantic. What audiences see as a tender moonlit moment between Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer was, in reality, a frustrating and laugh-filled ordeal that stretched over 12 takes. The main culprit? The equipment itself. To create the soft glow of evening, the crew relied on enormous arc lights, a standard tool of the time. Unfortunately, these lights emitted a strange groaning sound, almost like a deep raspberry. Every time Andrews and Plummer leaned in for their kiss, the odd noise would echo across the set, and both actors would immediately burst into laughter. No matter how hard they tried, they simply couldn't keep a straight face. Andrews confessed to dueling with the giggles with Plummer in The Sound of Music, the making of America's favorite movie. The moment they started, the lights would go on with a low growl, letting them laugh harder and harder. The laughter from everyone around only intensified. Then, many years later, Plummer said, "The poor girl was so full of warmth and charm, it was impossible to be an iceberg in her company." Robert Wise, the director, was getting furious. For him, time was money, and a prolonged, waylaid kiss scene was not budgeted. He eventually wisely changed the lighting arrangement, breaking off the scene in semi-darkness to drown out both distracting noises and actor reactions. Thus, the oddity of shots was created, which, when patched together, formed one smooth and romantic illusion. An elegantly frozen kiss, as one would say, indicated an engagement between Maria and the captain. But what these actors remember? Hours of suppressed laughter, awkward retakes, and the strange hum of arc lights misbehaving. The dangerous lake scene. One of the most playful sequences in The Sound of Music, Maria and the children tumbling out of a rowboat into a sparkling lake, was far more dangerous than it looked. On screen, the scene seems cheerful, the Von Trapp children laughing as they splash into the water. But off-camera, it carried real risk, particularly for the youngest cast member. The production required 4 takes of the boat tipping over, each one designed to look spontaneous, yet controlled. The challenge was that Kim Carath, who played the youngest daughter Gretel, could not swim. Julie Andrews had been instructed to fall forward into the water so she would land near Carath and pull her to safety.
On the actual take they used, Julie lost her footing, she flipped over the back of the boat.
But in the chaos of filming, Andrews accidentally toppled backward, away from the struggling child. For a tense moment, little Gretel was left floundering, her head bobbing under the surface. Crew members rushed in quickly, and Heather Menzies' Louisa can actually be seen in the final cut helping to carry Carath out of the lake. Andrews later recalled bitterly in interviews and television specials that she was horrified by the accident, but at the same time, she praised Carath's bravery. Although scared, the young actress continued with the scene without complaint. The footage kept it there at that surprising authenticity. The water scenes opened up different problems. The lake, for one, proved to be uncomfortably chilly, and the children would have to endure several dunkings during takes. Costumes became heavy with water, and it made swimming about even more difficult. Safety divers and crew hovered nearby just in case, but this left the young actors tired and anxious. Behind the bikes and puppet strings. Few moments in The Sound of Music capture the playful bond between Maria and the Von Trapp children better than the lively bicycle sequence during Do Re Mi. On screen, it flows effortlessly. Maria leads the children through Salzburg on a carefree ride, music and movement blending in perfect harmony. But the truth is that this short sequence required months of preparation, endless rehearsals, and some clever behind-the-scenes problem-solving. Before the cast ever set foot in Austria, Julie Andrews and the 7 child actors spent weeks on the 20th Century Fox lot in Los Angeles rehearsing their bicycle choreography. Every move had to match the rhythm of the song, when to pedal, when to stop, and how to ride in sync as a group. Choreographers Mark Bro and Dee Dee Wood relied on detailed storyboards created by Maurice Zuberano to plan each shot, ensuring the timing felt both natural and cinematic. By the time filming began, the children could ride with precision, making the complex routine look spontaneous. The immediately frivolous puppet show interlude, The Lonely Goat Herd, called for yet more coordination. Famous puppeteers Bill and Cora Baird put together extensive marionettes, and Julie and the kids rehearsed for 3 weeks so it looked as if they were manipulating the puppets themselves. Every string pull, nod, and kick was choreographed, making the #1 of the most whimsical highlights in the film. Meanwhile, the young cast was in the literal act of growing up on set. Nicholas Hammond, Friedrich, was 6 inches taller by the end of filming, temporarily overtaking poor Charmian Carr, Liesel, who had to stand on boxes for some shots to maintain the illusion. During filming, Debbie Turner, Marta, lost 2 front teeth, which necessitated prompt conjuring by the props department of a set of false replacements for her to wear in order to maintain visual consistency with her smile on screen. Although they faced many challenges, the children stayed upbeat under Julie's warmth and support, and thus was born joyful sequences that were all about family and music, reminding audiences, then and now, that even rehearsed choreography can feel spontaneous and free of effort. Continuity blunders in classic scenes. Continuity is one of the trickiest aspects of filmmaking. Every scene must appear seamless, even though movies are often shot out of order with multiple takes and angles stitched together. In The Sound of Music, continuity slips through the cracks more than once, and eagle-eyed viewers can spot these inconsistencies that break the illusion of perfect flow. One glaring example involves Liesel's rainy entrance after meeting Rolf. When she climbs through Maria's window, she first stands in the middle of the bed while speaking, but when the angle changes, she's suddenly on the side, only to jump back to the center when the camera switches again. The shifts are small, yet they create an impossible sequence of movements. Captain Von Trapp also suffers from continuity quirks.
Oh, Captain, you're home!
In one scene, he angrily throws down a drape that the children used as play clothes. When the camera cuts back, the drape has vanished completely from the ground. In another instance, while preparing to play the guitar before Edelweiss, he holds a glass in his right hand and gestures with his left. But in the next shot, the glass has magically switched hands. These quick reversals would be impossible in real time, but slipped through in editing. Location shots add to the collection. During a carriage ride through Salzburg, a carriage passes the family by a beauty salon called Friseur. Shortly afterwards, the same storefront can be seen again as Maria turns her head, which leads to the strong conclusion that the same street was used to stretch out the scene. There was also hair continuity trouble. During long shots of Do Re Mi, the hair flies wildly around.
Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti.
But in close-ups, it is perfectly neat difference is that the same shots are compiled on different days of shooting. Even placements for children are changed. After shooting the lake scene, Louisa is first made to appear on the left, but in the very next frame, she is already on the right holding Gretel. Such switching would remind audiences that filming 7 other kids completing 7 different takes would have had misplaced variation in placement. Nor do these continuity goofs compromise the film's charm. They, in fact, add a layer of hidden amusements, revealing that the magic of editing is what even the classics thrive on, and sometimes the magic buckles. Editing glitches in motion. While musical numbers in The Sound of Music appear seamless,
I'm talking about The Sound of Music, which turns 50 this year.
they were often stitched together from multiple takes, shot across different days, and performed in varied conditions. This sometimes led to movement changes, moments where actors' positions or actions don't match from shot to shot. Though subtle, these jumps can pull keen-eyed viewers out of the illusion. One such slip occurs during the charming scene where the children sing for the Baroness. In a wide shot, Liesl is just beginning to lower her guitar, her hands poised mid-action. But in the immediate close-up, the guitar is already nearly on the ground, suggesting time skipped between frames. The transition feels jarring once noticed, even though the flow of music distracts most audiences. Another example surfaces during the Salzburg Folk Festival near the film's end. The Von Trapp children shift places between shots. Gretel stands in front with Kurt just behind her in one view, but in the very next frame, Kurt has moved, and Gretel is suddenly between Louisa and Kurt. These changes create the impression of children popping from one spot to another. Captain Von Trapp has problems with staging as well. The scene Edelweiss sees him indulging in singing while seated in the middle of the couch. At the same time, he is captured by a camera angle that shows him suddenly settled on the far left side without any time to move. The repetition sneaks into the film too. An example is where, after the nuns have sung, "How do you solve a problem like Maria?" one shuffles Maria down to Mother Abbess's office with having put one hand on Maria's shoulder, then saying, "You can go in now," and leaves. Moments later, from a different camera angle, the same movement and dialogue play again, an editing oversight that slipped into the final cut. These jumps and mismatches represent the difficulties of filming musical numbers, but they do not detract from the magic. Casting close calls and final choices. Though the final cast of The Sound of Music became one of the most beloved ensembles in film history, the journey to assemble it was anything but smooth. Beyond Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer,
No matter how many times it had happened correctly, where Julie fell forward to catch little Kimmy,
nearly every key role faced debates, auditions, and surprising close calls. One of the trickiest parts to cast was Liesl, the teenage daughter who sings the charming 16 going on 17. A long list of rising stars auditioned, including Mia Farrow, Patty Duke, Kurt Russell, and Terry Garr. Farrow, in particular, was considered a strong contender. She auditioned 3 separate times, impressing director Robert Wise with her sweetness, but ultimately falling short because of her limited energy and weaker dancing skills. That role eventually went to Charmian Carr, who brought just the right blend of poise, innocence, and vitality. Physical appearances also became points of concern. Julie Andrews, for instance, was naturally a brunette, but the studio wanted Maria to be blonde. The first attempt at lightening her hair went badly, leaving it with a brassy orange tint. To fix it, they dyed it entirely blonde. Daniel True-Hit, who played Rolf, underwent a similar transformation. His hair was bleached for the role, but the treatment damaged it so badly that it thinned permanently. Stunt work even led to some very peculiar casting changes. Although the Von Trapp children performed most of their own scenes, Andrews did need a stand-in for one moment. The tree-climbing shot where Maria hangs from a branch as the captain drives by. Her double, Larry Thomas, had previously worked with Andrews on Mary Poppins, even performing some of the flying sequences. All these twists and near misses show how a tender process is casting. One might change the course of the film drastically if one were to cast Mia Farrow as Liesl, or indeed some other actress as Maria. Rather, the end cast appears natural, as if fate itself had matched actors with roles. Save the best for last. This one will have you double-checking the screen. Mistakes hiding in plain sight. Even a meticulously crafted film like The Sound of Music couldn't escape small mistakes that slipped into the final cut.
We're here just outside Salzburg, Austria for the 60th anniversary of The Sound of Music. And guys, I can report these hills are...
Some errors are so subtle that casual viewers might miss them. But once spotted, they reveal just how human the filmmaking process really is. These plain-sight bloopers remind us that movie magic often involves clever editing, not perfection. One of the clearest examples comes during the family's escape sequence at the Abbey. The Von Trapps are shown hiding behind headstones, but the problem is obvious on closer inspection. The headstones are completely flat against the wall. No one could realistically squeeze behind them, making the hiding place implausible. Still, the tension of the moment overshadows the illogical staging, allowing the mistake to remain unnoticed for decades by most audiences. Come another slip, far more comforting to the children in the stormy night of the cozy bedroom scene as Maria sings, "My Favorite Things." At one point, little Marta mouths the words, "Feel so bad." Although her character cannot be singing, it is a small but charming giveaway that the young actress was swept up in the music. Similarly, at the end of Do Re Mi, Kurt continues lip-syncing even though the song is already over. His mouth remains open on screen, a playful reminder that childlike exuberance outlasts the cue. The prop details clearly reveal the anachronisms starting to appear in the scene's setting. When the family flees the premises in a motorcar, there is a brief downward shot of the underside of the vehicle where one can see the Michelin X radial tires. The problem? Those tires did not exist till 1948, 10 years after the movie was set, in 1938. Then, keep an ear out for a sound gaffe in a scene between Captain Von Trapp and Max. When Georg taps Max on the cheek, we hear the sound of 3 distinct taps, though his hand made actual physical contact only twice. Individually, each of those instances hardly amounts to much, yet collectively, they give a quaint charm to the movie's legacy. And that's our list of 13 surprising Sound of Music bloopers you probably missed. Which one stood out to you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear them. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. And don't go just yet. Click the next video on your screen for even more incredible movie moments.